Good morning, Guardians. Ebontis here with your weekly reset information for November 15th. Pretty standard week here, guys. Got raid reset and all the good stuff as usual, so let's just jump right into the basics. First thing we've got is the Nightfall this week. This is going to be the Wretched Eye strike. With these modifiers, it can be rough, so my Nightfall solo could take a little more time than usual to get up, so we'll see how it goes. Modifiers we've got are Arc Burn, so 2 times damage from you, 3 times from enemies. Those Shaxx alone in the end are going to be pretty rough, so just be careful. Got Brawler. Your melee is going to be very powerful, so keep that in mind if you got anybody close to you. Just consider that one as a last resort, though, because that burn can be pretty lethal. Got Ironclad. More enemies will have shields, especially some of those Shaxx are going to have solar shields, so they can be rough. And then you've got Exposure. So you got a lot of shields, but once they're gone, then you're just working with health. So this one could be a rough Nightfall solo. Again, we'll see how this one goes. I'll get it up as soon as I can for you guys. As for the Siva Crisis Heroics, we've got Specialist this week, Exposure, and Airborne. So Specialist, 2 times damage from your special weapon. Primary and Heavy are 3/4 damage, so keep that in mind depending on what you're going after. Exposure, of course, same theme here as Nightfall. Lots of shields, but once they're gone, then you're just down to your health and it doesn't really recharge. This is actually a really good week for Red Death to help counter that, to keep your shield up. It's kind of a good thing to use. And then Airborne, of course, pairs well with Specialist. You can use Telesto for this one. Fire, jump up in the air, let those things explode, and you'll get a pretty good amount of damage from those. So pretty good week for Telesto here. Keep that one in mind if you've got it for your Siva Crisis Heroics. As for the daily mission, we've got Download Complete. Open the Forgotten Archives at Clovis Bray and search for a way to defend against Siva. Jump in here, get your 15 legendary marks for the day. Probably missing a few after Iron Banner, so this probably isn't a terrible idea. As for the artifacts this week, we've got the Memory of Timer. So full strength roll on this one. Melee attacks on minions of the darkness have a chance to temporarily turn them against their allies. So turn any red bar health enemy, definitely not a major, but any red bar enemy against their allies, have them run around with you. Can be fun to do, but it's definitely not a high chance, so this one is unfortunately not the best artifact. Then we've got the Memory of Radagast. This is the fun one. Discipline and strength roll. Gain the ability to reflect energy-based projectiles when guarding with your sword. Increase sword ammo capacity. It's always a nice fun one to use, especially if one of you reflect a rocket or a super back at somebody else. It's very entertaining if you can pull it off, but kind of difficult to do when it comes to PvP because you pretty much get one shot to do it. And then finally we've got the Memory of Galleon. Full discipline roll here. And it grants a detailed radar. Radar persists when sighting with primary weapons. So you've got the combination of minimal tool like Third Eye, then also Relentless Tracker, so you get that great radar. Honestly, of the three, this is a great one to have pretty much in any situation. If you're going to go with an artifact, this one's pretty solid. As for the bounties this week, we've got Crushing Blows. Use the Iron Battle Axe or powerful enemy weapons to decimate hostile threats. Kill 100 enemies with the Iron Battle Axe. Good thing to knock out in Archon's Forge. Got Anti-Splicer, complete patrols on the Plague Lands. Just run around, do 10 patrols, not too shabby. Then for Archon's Forge, we've got Shaxx and then Vandals for victories against each one. Again, remember it's RNG, but if you can find a group, hang out in there for a little while, you'll bound to work on some of this for sure. As for the Crucible side of things, daily Crucible mode is going to be Control. Good old 6v6, capture zones to increase points after every kill. So you guys know this one pretty well after all week of Iron Banner. Jump in here, get your 15 legendary marks for the day. Probably spend them during Iron Banner, so keep doing all this stuff to get your marks back full. As for the weekly PvP, we've got Inferno Supremacy. Defeat your opponent and take their crests. You've got no trackers. You've also got slower spawns on special ammo and heavy ammo, things like that. So jump in here, your first 3 matches on your weeklies will get you 10 legendary marks, so use this to refill your marks back up as well. On the other side, we've got Salvage. Race the other team to capture and hold the relics. 3v3 team objective. This one doesn't come up all that often anymore, so if you need this one for Grimoire or anything specific, use this as a good week to make sure to knock this part of any quests out or anything like that. As for the weekly Shaxx bounty, this week it's going to be Supremacy, so that weekly match is going to be pretty much the right one to go with. For Supremacy, you've got 7 match completions, 50 primary kills, kill credits, 30 and 20 crests denied required. So jump in here and get your Nightfall tier rewards. Not too shabby. Another buddy of mine is definitely doing a weekly video on this, and the Nightfall seems more beneficial, but you can still get some decent stuff from this one, so try and knock this one out still. It's definitely worthwhile as a backup. As for the raid challenge this week, we've got the Vosik challenge back again. This is the one where you need to use the Siva bombs that he drops during the damage phase to actually close the rooms that are open. You have to close 2 rooms on each of the first 2 rounds, so eventually close the 4 full rooms. And then on that 3rd damage phase, you need to kill him in that one. So that's the full sequence. Damage phase, close 2 rooms with Siva bombs. Make sure and throw those Siva bombs actually at the little things on the doors to shut them. And you have to do that for 2 of them on the first round, 2 of them on the second round, and then the 3rd round you need to be able to do enough damage to take him out completely. So full damage in 3 rounds, use 2 bombs on each of the 2 rounds to knock him out, and you guys should knock this one out for your challenge mode reward. So have fun with this one. That pretty much wraps it up for me for the week, guys. Pretty standard week here. Good old Nightfall. Seems like it could be a pain in the butt, so I'll get that one up as soon as I can, but could take quite a few attempts. So forgive me if it's a little slower than usual this week. We'll have to see how feasible that one is, if I can find a cheese or not for you guys. I try not to do cheese spots usually on these, but if there's a way to do that on this one and I'm having some struggles, I might have to throw that one in there for you guys. Other than that, enjoy the week. It is pretty standard. Jump into that raid, knock out that Vosik challenge, and get some good loot out of that. And just enjoy the usual, guys. Have fun this week. Back to the pretty standard here in Destiny. Waiting to see what our next event is going to be. And start working on your Twitch streaming, guys. Work on that new emblem we're going to have active here pretty soon. So good luck to everybody this week. Have fun, and I will talk to you guys later. Enjoy.